everybody. Welcome to the WBC Talks. Stay home, stay safe. This is round number 40. Jill, finally 40 rounds.
That 40. He does 80. This is his number 80.
It's my 80 show.
Spanish in the morning.
2 months, yeah. It's a lot of fun. And this time it's going to be really amazing because I think everybody here is going to tell us how to be a millionaire.
Oh.
Is that right?
Okay, that's a different lesson plan, but okay.
Okay.
Step one, start with $5 million and buy an airline.
Yeah, you're right.
You'll wind up with one pretty quickly.
Not now.
Yeah.
Let me introduce first Jill Diamond. She's the chair of the WBC Cares and my best friend.
Thank you, Victor. I have nothing to say after that. Sending you love and virtual hugs.
Thank you, Jill. And now, ladies first, obviously, Caroline Realm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello.
I said that right. She's
Perfect.
a tax expert, author, speaker, and advocate. She's passionate about advising athletes about finance.
Yep. Among others, yes.
Perfect. And now, welcome.
Thank you.
Rob Malouf, a producer and cinematographer known for Small Talk, Waiting for Espresso, and The Business of Boxing, Part 1. And you have to explain that, huh? What's the business of boxing? You're going to have 1 hour.
Sure. So the Part 1 was a short 10-minute film that we made a number of years ago. And it got such a cool response from various shows that we entered it into that we thought, let's turn it into a series, because boxing is just so big. We couldn't just do, one documentary on it. We had to really go all out. So it's an 8-episode series, 45 minutes apiece. And each episode is on a different facet of the boxing business. One episode might be on promotions. Another might be all about champions and sanctioning bodies and governing bodies, consumption, amateurs. We have a whole episode on women's boxing, and we have a whole episode on fighter safety.
That sounds really good. And I've been in many of them.
I said, we have nothing else to ask you. You've told us everything we needed to know. I'm going to keep muting because I'm in New York and the sirens are going to go by. So if you see my mouth moving, just say, turn on the mic.
Brian Sealand. I said it right.
You did. I'd be fine with however you chose to say it.
I mean, I'm Mexican. I get confused sometimes, okay? COO, Honorable Mr. Sealander's public service, including time as Chief Strategy Officer to a governor, Communications Director to United States Senator, and Multi-State Director on Presidential Campaign. Reporter at Gannett-owned newspaper.
Back when newspaper was actually like paper. Like you actually had to go pick up an actual newspaper and you'd actually see what we actually wrote in the driveway. It was crazy.
You have to explain that to my kids because they don't know that. They will ask if you're throwing iPads to the driveway or something.
What do you mean you have to wait until tomorrow to find out what's happening today, Dad? Oh my God. Right.
Was that before spell check?
That was, well, I had some really nasty editors. So great side story on that. I was 15 when my first job ever was cleaning toilets at a pharmacy. And I was not particularly loving that job. So I sent some clips from my high school paper to a bunch of like real newspapers, like, ones that served a whole bunch of counties and things. And I just didn't tell them how old I was. And they bit. And they were actually willing to hire me. So my mom at 15 years old used to have to drive me around the back of the newspaper. And I'd like walk around the front and then I'd write sort of actual articles, just like all these other reporters. And I'd call up the governor and congressman. I'm like, hi, this is Brian Sealander from the Courier News, and they didn't know any better. Quite the time. You couldn't pull it off anymore. They would have Googled me by now and they would have said, what, this kid, like, look at this kid's Instagram. There's no way we're giving him a job as a reporter.
No, we have nothing to ask you either, Brian. So
there you go. And I think why Jill and I are here, I built a digital sports network to a couple 100 million subscribers, and I run an e-commerce company now. So it's sort of a mix of how do you monetize the things you build, and then what do you do to stay safe and get through disaster relief from a public perspective? Is we're all trying to figure out how we reopen and get people together. I mean, everybody on this call does so much good to bring so many people together, the shared experiences that all of you have let people have. I mean, Keith, I saw in your bio, you used to run Webster Hall. So many great shared experiences there in my 20s. But all the good and all the uplift that you do, how do we get a realistic and reasonable path forward to bringing people back together so we could be inspired by all the great boxing and all the great camaraderie? And I'm not sure that we've aligned ourselves as a country or a world really the way we could to try and make that happen.
As you can see that Brian is very experienced as a spin doctor and in the world of media content, which is why he's here today.
I can't get the lighting right though. That's the problem, right? I got a face for radio.
Lean that.
And now it's the turn of Keith Sheldon, EVP of Programming and Development at BSE, committed to performance, growth, and innovation in live entertainment. Hello, Keith.
Hi, how are you, Victor?
I'm doing good. Here in Mexico City, enjoying the weather.
Very nice. We finally got some good weather here in New York. So
Yeah, we did.
trying to take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Mexico City has been really hot for the last couple of months at least. So it's getting rainy now.
We had a game down in Mexico City last year. The Nets played Oklahoma City. So we got to spend some time in your beautiful country.
I couldn't be in the NBA games lately because I'm working with boxing, but my first sport was basketball, and I even play pro in Mexico, and I'm 5'7". So
not center.
Yeah, of course. And when I got in television, I got in TV Azteca doing NBA games.
Very nice.
I spent a lot of time in that, and I had a lot of fun. As you can see, I have, I don't know how many books about
Oh, wow.
All right.
basketball, boxing, and cars. That's my hobby.
All right.
Depending on the draft picks this year, one of the NBA teams may sign you still.
I don't think so.
I'm here in Philadelphia, where our entire reason for fandom was be the worst, and someday we'll get picks.
You want another Allen Iverson?
Well, I mean, we got we got lots of picks, and one of them just forgot how to shoot. He first pick, and then he just never he just couldn't shoot, so we got rid of him. And we were like, why did we go through 2 losing seasons? He never even shot. It's okay though. We're in good spot this year. Yeah.
Jill.
Victor,
So
there's no question that the pandemic has taken lives and a great deal of emotional toll on everyone. Some people have found ways to use the time as positively as possible, but it's a roller coaster. The other aspect is our concern about a changing world, the loss of our traditions, the economic ramification, jobs, longing for sports, one of the greatest pastimes and distractions that we really need right now. Yet we can't rush things at the cost of health and safety. So today we're honored with a panel of people who perhaps can give us some economic therapy. How do we cope with the uncertainty? Are there some smart steps we can take for the rebound? And how have their lives been changed? Of course, none of us really know the answers, but we can start the discussion. So I would love to start with Caroline, because Caroline, you are an expert. You are the maven on all of these things. First of all, how is it in Canada?
Well, in Canada, of course, like you were saying, we would like to see sports. We want to see more. People are complaining about the fact that, okay, they're watching, shows, boxing shows that, happened years ago, same thing with hockey. And they're saying, well, we already know what's going to happen. I know the outcome. I know who's going to win. So I think people are working really hard right now to say, okay, we need to do something. And is there a way to be... This was with Adonis, yeah. So really working hard and finding ways to say, okay, we need to be proactive, because if we wait until someone is going to say, okay, now you can go ahead and you can, oh, Bernard. So we cannot wait. So this is why, on one side, you see promoters really are looking at what's going on, in foreign countries, like in the UK, also looking at what, people in the US are doing to be able to come up, to have shows. So what is going to be safe for the fighters, because they're saying, well, fighters, they want to fight, we need to keep them active, and they need to make money as well. So we want to be able to find a solution. And if you're looking, well, when we were hosting shows here, well, Montreal is a great market for boxing. So when we were hosting shows here and even in other provinces, well, many of the opponents, when you're looking at the undercards, they were coming from foreign countries, especially Mexico, and less from the US, but Argentina. So now with, borders being closed, international borders being closed, at least, till the end of June. Even with the US, it's unclear, because now they said it's closed until June 21st. So this means that we may have to find, other ways to be able to have shows. So they're looking more and more at having basically Canadian fighters, fighting other Canadian fighters, to be able to come up with shows, and something that's going to be, reasonable and feasible, considering, we don't even know what's going to happen next. But, people want to make money. And we will need to see also, when it comes for, for promoters, well, cost, it's always the same thing. You need to make money. But what we see here is that people, they really want to see boxing, especially boxing. So if we could, be able to be one of the first sports to come back, well, we saw, with the MMA. So even people who were not really interested in MMA or watching UFC. So if we could kind of be one of the, the next sport to come back, that could be a great thing for boxing. So I think these are things that we'll be looking at, and hopefully things will pick up. But I think probably pay-per-view, I think people are saying, well, of course, depending on sponsors, what they will be willing to do, and, how much they can get from pay-per-view and also from the TV. But it's looking pretty good when we're looking at what's coming, especially with sports bar probably being closed, people not, being in a position to have many people at the house because of the virus. So maybe, when it's going to be time to watch it's going to help, and, we can kind of restart the wheel.
So, Carolyn, what is your connection to boxing, and why are you so passionate about helping athletes? I know that's a real cause célèbre for you.
Yeah, well, I met people. It started with, we were talking, before we started the Zoom, I was talking about 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗, who's basically one of the person who really introduced me to boxing, because he was working with HBO. He was, he's still an MC, so still involved in boxing. So I started to watch shows and attend also, basically shows, also the weigh-ins and everything. And I started with several boxers also, because since I'm a tax lawyer and I do a lot of estate planning, Canada-US estate planning. So working with them on, making sure they have proper documents in place, reviewing some contracts. So I did, things like that. But after that, it was really, I really, became a fan of boxing, started to do the boxing training, and also starting with a gym back in Quebec City. Basically, we started a project to help kids who are not, basically underprivileged kids. So we had a project to help them with their homeworks, and we were helping them with their homeworks. And after that, they had access to the boxing gym, and this was for free, so they could, kind of, have this opportunity for them. And then after that, I started to sponsor boxers, amateur boxers, and then professional boxers, and then Mexican boxers. So I'm still well, currently they're stuck in Mexico, but yeah, so it's really like, and then, meeting all the people, and you saw, just when you saw the pictures, you can see that I travel a lot also to meet with fighters, to attend events, and yes, and help us, the best I can. Yeah.
Addictive, isn't it? It's addictive once you get involved in the community. Yeah. You start, it's almost like a hobby, and then the next thing it's a mistress, and the next thing you're married to it, and everything else goes to the side. I want to get back to how we can take some steps and how the boxers can. But let me ask Rob something. You did boxing series part 1. What do you think part 2 is going to look like when all this lockdown stops to open up? I mean, I saw some of your footage. It was wonderful. But what do you think the future for you would be? And what do you want to see when you start shooting again?
Well, so far we have over 50 participants, and we're looking to get another 20. But I know that I'm sure the next 20 participants, when I sit down and I talk to them, we're going to have some different questions and some different subject matter about how the pandemic has affected them. And one thing that I think that might come up as I might talk to a few more congressmen. I know one person that I had spoken to, Congressman Pete King, over in New York, and himself, along with John McCain, had a couple of times over the years, I think, spanning back to the late 90s, had tried to adjust parts of the Ali Act to try to find a federal commission. In particular, that was kind of their sticking point. And they tried a number of times and it failed. It never really got to the House floor. And I asked him how to change things. And he said that the real way that any kind of change can happen like this is there has to be like a public health issue, like steroids in baseball. They looked at that it could become a national crisis because a lot of kids look up to the professional players and they're doing steroids, and they thought, well, we really don't want our kids doing this. So that's when Congress got involved. So Congress really can't get involved until there's some kind of big public outcry about a public health issue. So the reason for that big long story is that we're seeing now, and we just saw last week with the UFC holding their event down in Florida, and they're first. Obviously, each commission has their own rules, and each state has their own rules about lockdown. And who knows? 3 months from now, or 2 months from now, 6 months from now, we may learn that some of the events that open up first might have led to another outbreak. We're not sure. We'll see what happens. I hope that it doesn't. But it might be an argument for new legislation. We don't know. But it will be interesting to see what people have to say about that sort of thing.
Well, I personally have always believed that the commission should be unified, because you go state to state and things are different, but boxing is a global sport. So it's hard. The Americans come in, and I'm sorry, I am a proud American, and say it should be like this, but it can't be, because you're dealing with the World Boxing Council alone has 167 countries. You're not going to do it by just instituting something in the United States and saying everybody do it that way. In fact, I think that's the basis of some wars. So we really boxing as a global sport, not as a United States sport. But what have you learned during this documentary that you didn't know that you might want to share with us?
Oh God. I mean, when I started doing part 1,
just tell us all your secrets.
Oh God, it's been such a long ride. I mean, when we did part 1 and we were just, God, it was just a little 10-minute video, and it was just a little project. I mean, it was, I was just slightly wet behind the ears a little bit about boxing. And I'd always been a fan. I'd always watched it when I was a kid, and I watched it, as I grew older. I didn't really know anything about the business. However, right around, I think it was 2018, right around the fall of 2018, when I was thinking about turning this thing into a series, I started, looking around on Twitter as most boxing fans do. That's kind of like the place to go. And there are more and more fans that are business savvy, or think they're business savvy, and want to talk all about how the fighters are making money, how they're not making money, how their promoters are making money, how they're not making money. and they really would have these intense, very long arguments about how the business works. And I thought maybe there's something to that. And then not much long later in the winter of 2018, ESPN put a whole segment on of Dana White arguing with Oscar De La Hoya over the economic differences between their two companies. And I thought, ESPN doesn't just kind of let anybody on willy-nilly and dedicate a whole half an hour of their programming to, for no reason whatsoever. So they must kind of know something's up. And as it turned out, that conversation led to more conversations and led to more controversy and more drama, which is obviously great for the entertainment business. So that's kind of why I jumped into it. And ever since then, I've been learning about, all sorts of different things about how the industry works, how it doesn't work. And I can't give away too much, but
don't worry, because Brian will say it and make it positive when you're done. So just say
sure. Well, that one thing that I think is pretty cool that I learned. I didn't really understand exactly the far reach of every sanctioning body. And when I was able to come down to Mexico City and hang out with the WBC and interview Mauricio, I had no idea how much charity they were involved in, which it seems like, some people might think it's not that important or it's not integral to the sport, but really to the, especially for a sport like boxing, those that kind of really run things at the top, really, I think it's really important to give back, and those kinds of things that I discovered were pretty cool, and happy to be obviously happy to hang out with the WBC whenever I can.
Mauricio, if you're around, this would be a good time to zoom in.
He's gonna come in from the side of Victor's screen, be like, "Hello," and then just do.
So the WBC, starting with Jose, who had a big feeling of service for other people, loved boxing. Everyone loves making money, but there's a conscience involved, and he loved his athletes and he loved his sport. So much has been done that people don't know about. And then we just sort of formalized it, because don't you think that particularly in sports, most people want to do good things. They just don't have the platform. We are fortunate enough to have that platform. It's a huge network, and it gives people a way to show the best part of who they are. Especially a lot of these athletes have wonderful, wonderful hearts, given where they've come from.
Combining that with some of Rob's footage and the desperate need for sports right now, I wonder if there's a series of short form videos called shadow boxing, which are some of the stories that you're getting, Rob, of people who can't currently box in the ring right now. And there's sort of personal vignettes of people whose title shots or rise up the rungs have gotten derailed because of this. And you could pull together some of the footage that isn't going to build towards your major climax that you're still shrouding in mystery, so that we can't wait to see it. But whether there's like stories right now of people who've been derailed and how they're dealing with that, and what it's like sort of 10 minutes in the life of somebody that isn't going to get in the ring in Montreal anytime soon. Because I know there's definitely a funnel for sports networks that are desperate to see something.
Yeah, I was just talking to a professional boxer yesterday. She was telling me that, she's dying to get back in the gym. She's developing all sorts of different things to do at home to work out, but at the same time, they're bored and they're trying to figure out how to make money, how to train. Because most of the, obviously, as you guys know, the professional boxers that haven't made it yet, that aren't top billing performers, they still have other jobs, and they can't work. All they can do is train. Well, now how are they going to train? They have to figure out how to do that at home. But some of them are this one in particular, she's interested in kind of developing her persona out in public, her public persona. So she's got really into that TikTok program that I feel like I'm just probably 10 years too old enough to understand what that's all about.
It's just Vine, but twice as long with better hashtags. If you're that old.
And she got herself, I think, 40,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool. And as we all know that, you know, depending, you could be the best boxer in the world. You could be Larry Holmes and defend your title 20 different times, second only to Joe Louis. But, you know, if you're not that kind of great public persona, you might end up fighting until you're, what was he, 52 years old, still fighting because he had to pay the bills. And younger folks like Ryan Garcia are, you know, when I interviewed him, I think he had close to about 1 million Instagram followers, and now he's somewhere peaking up around 4 million. So I think that, you know, this can kind of give some boxers a chance to try to like break out in the social world now that so many more people are just using so much more social media than they even were before the pandemic, because we have a lot of people have nothing else to do but hang out on their phones or hang out on their computers.
And if you're aggregating those stories together and pitching a network, then you're saying you've got an install base of 20 million Instagram followers just to start. So whoever buys it has the sort of pipeline already of 20 million shared views to outreach on what shadow boxing or whatever you decided to call it would be.
So, Rob, if you want to now and get
That's
this shit going, go ahead and do it. We'll understand. But I don't want to skip Keith. Keith, you have taken the biggest blow on this in terms of being an industry that depends so much not only on TV but on your fan base. So this has to have affected not only your staff but the people who run the commissaries, who sell T-shirts. I mean, the ticket takers. I mean, it's horrible. And also, New York is a tourist town, so anybody who's involved with restaurants or theaters, everything is gone, dark, kaput, now that we're all depressed. What's happening with the teams? What's happening, you know, what are provisions being made? How do you foresee opening up the Barclay? And just tell us everything.
I will. So I should start out by saying that, you know, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to our ownership group. Joe Cy and his wife, Clara Cy, they purchased the team over the summer, and they, you know, once the pandemic hit, they made a commitment to the entire staff, even the part-timers, even the vendors at the concession stands, even the stagehands who we only indirectly pay, to make sure that they were taken care of for the events that they otherwise would have worked. And that's through the month of May. So huge debt of gratitude to our ownership group. They really stepped up to make sure that the employee base was taken care of. As I was referencing earlier to you, Jill, I think that we've shifted from, hey, how do we stave off all these losses that we're taking on a daily basis, to a mode where we're thinking now about, okay, we just saw the UFC fight happen in Jacksonville. We see NASCAR coming back online in a fanless capacity. Korean baseball, the Bundesliga came back in Europe over the weekend. So we're starting to think a little bit more about, hey, what does reopening look like? And I think that serves as a piece of optimism for, you know, everybody involved, from the executive staff on down to the part-timers, as you referenced. You know, certain markets are being more aggressive than others in terms of reopening strategy. I think it's just important that everybody's very cautious about how they reopen and reopening in the right way, because the one venue, and albeit a small sample size, but the one venue that opens, maybe it's a club venue in some other market than New York, where, you know, there's 20 cases coming out of a rock show that was 200 person capacity. Well, that's going to set everybody back, because, you know, the media is going to gravitate towards that story. It's going to be a big headline, and it's going to give the political powers that be, the medical community, that pause to say, hey, let's tap the brakes. Maybe we're coming back too quickly. So I think rather than rushing back, I think it's probably more important to make sure that we're thinking about all the right things, going at the right cadence, and doing all the things that are going to make sure that everybody can reopen safely. So
I know you've lost a lot, but have new ideas come from this? New ways of marketing, new ways of showing sports that might have come as a result of this?
Well, I mean, certainly the virtual showcases, whether it's sports, whether it's concert type events, you know, that's come to the forefront. I think that, historically people were less interested in seeing, highlight reels. They wanted to see kind of more forward-looking content. And so I think our social media platforms have thrived during this period. It's a horrible time, but we've tried to take advantage of those types of situations. And then just from a customer experience perspective, we're thinking about safety and risk mitigation and things like air purification and temperature checks that, look, it took a pandemic to get there, but these are probably measures that should be in place anyway in certain instances. And, we'll see what's here to stay in the long run. But, anytime you have an opportunity to hit pause and think more about the customer journey, that's guest service, that's their experience, that's their safety every time they step into an arena. Maybe that's a good thing in the long term.
Brian, how important is the message we're getting to the outcome? I mean, that's basically what you've done. I mean, are we getting real information, and how will that influence how we approach this? And are we being pushed to move too quickly based on what certain people are doing within the sport?
Well, I'll go back to my sort of old days of actual newspaper, right? Where in our part of New Jersey, right, 120,000 people opened the same thing the same morning and had the same set of facts that had a series of editors that vetted very carefully to make sure that what you wrote was actually true, included perspectives from all sorts of sides, and had some demonstrable truth to it. And then all of our conversations that we had with each other were based on that same set of facts that we shared and agreed on. And that started to change as we had 24-hour news. Then we didn't have as much time to react to the set of facts because we had to get it breaking as soon as possible. And then one network became 3 networks, became multiple networks. And then kind of had a choice on what sort of set of perspectives you want to look at, right? Like the comment about 3 blind men with an elephant, and each one of them describes something very, very different. And none of them together can sort of piece the whole piece together and figure out what it is that's in the room with them. And where you're at right now determines so much of what set of facts you're looking at. And I think that's still something that we are struggling with society wide in every country now, to try and figure out what common set of facts we need to agree on before we can even go forward. I mean, there's the idea, I make sure that when I go outside, my kids go outside, we all wear masks. Not because I don't want to get it, because the mask doesn't stop me from getting it probably, it stops me from giving it. But the simple wearing of a mask has become a divisive issue, at least here in the Philadelphia area, which is in the sort of bright red center of what's been happening in COVID right now. So until we can get an established set of facts, you're going to have people that say, I want to show up to the Barclays Center because, damn it, I'm going to prove that like I am somehow tougher than a microscopic virus I can't see, that could care less about your intention on why you went to the Barclays Center and cares only about what's in your lungs that it can ruin. So I think, that's a struggle that we're trying to work with. I think the CDC has been more or less absent in terms of giving its guidance. I mean, it's as much as we love Dr. Fauci, well, as much as like 80% of the country does. It's weird that he, and not the head of the Center for Disease Control, which used to be the sort of global brand for helping to tackle pandemics, is absent. I mean, I vividly remember my friend became governor at exactly like the worst time to ever, up until now, the worst time to ever be governor, which is end of 2008. So he gets elected, huge budget deficit, gets handed this, and they're like, good luck, dude. You said you wanted to be governor in the worst way, and you're going to be governor in the worst way. Good luck solving this. And like, we ran all over this. We were getting death threats for the cuts we'd have to make. Like, people wanted to literally kill us. I called in the newspaper, and I'm like, somebody says that they should take Zoolander out, and I'm like, well, maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe they don't really want it. Anyway, it's a mess. And we get through our budget short discussion, and he presents it to the state, and we go back to the governor's office, and we're on the couch, and we're like sweating, and like, oh my God, I can't believe we got through the presentation. And this really sweaty, nervous looking guy is waiting outside. And we're like, oh, does he want to hurt us too? No. He said, hey, my name's Dr. Well, I don't want to say, but he's a doctor. And he came in to tell us that H1N1 had just started as a pandemic in our state as well. So they're like, congratulations on your budget crisis, but now there's H1N1 and we have to create massive quarantine centers immediately, or the entire campus of the University of Delaware could basically go up in viral flames. And, that was how we just rolled into that crisis, and we turned the gym, I believe, into a quarantine center, and we laid all these beds out, and we had people all over the world trying to figure out what was going on in other countries to see how they were dealing with it. And there's just like really different times, and that's an order of magnitude less dangerous, I think, than what we've been dealing with now. So I guess my answer is we don't really have, until we have figured out how to be honest and open with each other, and until we figured out what kind of facts we can all agree on, we're going to have very different sets of behaviors from very different sets of people that are going to exacerbate the divide in our country. And what that is likely going to do is delay our ability to go to the Barclays Center, which happens to be where I first met Jill Diamond and Mauricio, and be able to get back to work together.
Brian, I have a question. How hard it is for people? I grew up watching the news on television, and you knew that was the truth. Mm-hmm. But now you can read a lot of different versions, fake news, and many people, like my parents, my aunts, they think that what they read it's true because they are used to journalists, not everybody writing something. How can this affect this kind of pandemic situation?
Yeah, I mean, I tell, like, first of all, I think certainty is often the enemy of truth as well. I think the rush to sound certain gets in the way so often of being true. So think about all of the different certainties we've had around this pandemic. Like in March, it was certain that wearing a mask actually would be more likely to make you sick. And that turned out not to be true. But we were certain that this particular drug was going to do something that it turned out to not do. And because the more certain you sound, the more likely you are to get covered, people get misled into reading that what they are seeing is somehow verified because of this rush to be the most definitive and the most certain in what they're sharing. So I think that, that feeds into it too. We've lost the ability, and maybe we can get it back, to say, I don't know enough to be able to say with certainty that this is the truth, but here are 3 or 4 things that could be happening. And some experts say this and some experts say that, and we don't actually know. So, I'm empowering you as an audience to try and make up your own mind based on these series of facts, rather than, Jill mentioned which newspaper are we going to be like today, right? Like each of those that have a very different take on what we just said today. If we were just sort of more willing to admit that we don't really know, like we don't know whether you can get reinfected with this virus for certain. It looks like some great news out of South Korea today, that if you get infected, you might not be able to reinfect somebody, even if you can get reinfected, but we don't know. But saying I don't know doesn't draw people in. So I think as consumers, it's up to us to pick places that are more comfortable being less certain also, or we're going to wind up like yelling past each other well past when we should be back to work.
Keith, can you accommodate this at Barclays? Is there a way to actually seat people, or is that something that you're working on also? A way to actually have people in the stand where they're less in contact with each other?
Yeah, there's a whole set and variety of things that are being discussed, whether that's, alternating seats, 4, and then creating a gap of 2 seats and then going 4 additional seats, or even creating a checkerboard pattern throughout the arena where you're selling, 2 and then nobody behind, nobody in front, but people off diagonally to the sides. So there's a lot of conversation around that. I mean, there's even conversation about, hey, maybe arenas aren't open until everybody feels that it's safe to come back for the most part, but you still have, just like you have mobility impairment sections, you have socially distanced sections where people feel more comfortable being in those areas. And those who want to be part of the masses and have no fear of being infected or getting infected themselves are in a certain area. We're exploring timing of entrances. When you get your ticket and you're in this section, do you come into the arena at a certain time versus somebody else who comes in a different time, so there's not that big crush in front of the arena? It's all well and good if you're taking every measure possible within the confines of the arena, but the customer experience starts outside the 4 walls of the arena too. So thinking about that, thinking about temperature checks, even basics like what's on the floor of queues at concession stands. Just even the dots when you go to the pharmacy now, just is a little subtle reminder that, hey, maybe I'm getting too close to this person in front of me. And then the basics, you know, hand sanitization stands with far greater frequency than we ever would have imagined having them. Pre-packaged foods rather than an employee that's making your beverage and pouring your popcorn and touching your, you know, pre-packaging things. We're going through every iteration. But to somebody's point earlier, there's so many pieces of changing information by the day. So we're really reluctant to come out and say, here's our game plan. We're doing X, Y, and Z. Because if we hear, you know, tomorrow that Z is wrong, we need to reserve our right to change our mind.
Wow. Wow.
I really hope they just allow you guys to just open up the arenas like fully. Like once we realize and accept that, you know, everyone, you can't stop the flu, basically. You really can't stop this virus. We're not going to stomp it out, but we've given our health systems time to catch up. Like I'm in Boston right now, and right next door to my studio is the Boston Convention Center, which is now turned into a COVID hospital. And it's, for the most part, full of empty beds. I don't see ambulances coming and go throughout the day. I don't see anything like that, but I know that it's there in preparation of something. And I think that's a good thing. But I think the idea of, you know, forcing an arena and the 20,000 people that might be in the arena to have limited capacity, or to have, you know, certain types of seating arrangements or lines on the floor for where you're supposed to walk, I think it's a whole lot of security theater. And I mean, I didn't do so well in biology and chemistry when I was a kid, and that's why I hold a camera. But from what I can understand, you know, this sort of thing is it's going to get you. And I think if we're able to, you know, to prep for it and protect those that need the most protection, I'm really hoping that at some point you guys are able to get back to normal, which would be great. Well, one thing that I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about yet, and I'm wondering if any of you are concerned about it, is the psychological effects of fans on
the athletes,
on watching combat sports without a crowd, because it can look like a sparring match, or it can look like a street fight. You know, like imagine the gladiators going at it without the Colosseum. There's no spectacle, there's no crowd. It looks like two guys trying to kill each other. And that's the kind of thing that worries me. I worry that all of the fans that might be on the fence, or the crossover fans that you're trying to get, I worry that they might be turned off to seeing. I mean, to all of us that love boxing, we definitely see the sport, and we can see the art, and we can see what's going on. But the people that don't know, that need to have that crowd as verification that they're doing something that's okay and accepted and legal and cool. I worry that they might be turned off by it. And I was wondering if anybody else has that kind of worry also.
Rob, I would like to answer some of the parts that you already asked. Here in Mexico, the hospitals are full. We don't have the capacity, and what we're doing is buying time. So if you're staying at home, you're not getting infected now. You might get infected in a month or 2 months, but we're buying time to get a vaccine, to get space in the hospitals, and that's one of the issues. The other issue about boxing, I hear a lot, what is going to happen with a fight without crowd. If you have been in Vegas, especially in Vegas, because if you go to the Madison and you buy a ticket, usually you get there early to watch the previous fights. But in Vegas, people is in the casino and they get there just to see the co-main event and the main event. So you can watch, when we're working, I work as a boxing commentator for a network called Space that broadcasts to all Latin America. So I get there really early and I watch the 6 previous fights. Usually there's no crowd. Mm-hmm. The guys are 4 rounders, 6 rounders, even 8 rounders, and they are fighting without crowd. I have to say.
And it's being televised, some of it.
And I enjoy it. It's something missing, of course, but there's something extra too. that you can hear the effort, you can hear the punches, you can really hear the punches. So it's not that strange. Something's missing, but it's not that different, you know?
Yeah. I think maybe I'm just most concerned about those that are tuning in for the main event, and maybe their friends that might be the crossover fans, all those people that know who Sugar Ray Leonard and Mike Tyson are, you know, all those crossover people, like, are they, those are all the people that you want to bring to the sport to make it bigger. You know, the whole, you know, the spectacle of boxing and is really, I think it's just such a huge part of the event. And that's the kind of thing that worries me. Like, once you get to that main event, once you get to that huge thing, like, how lame is a ring walk going to be without hearing a crowd going nuts over, you know, Tyson Fury walking in, like, you know, like to Living in America, like he's Apollo Creed. Like, is it as effective as a spectacle without the crowd? And I don't know. I worry about that sort of thing, because I really want to see it, and I want other people to feel it, because I feel like that's how the sport grows. That's how you make cool photos and cool video.
I think you would know better than the rest of us, but I feel like for a fanless type event, you need to almost create a television style production behind it. And, you know, Victor, to your point, I think, Caroline, you mentioned the same thing. Many folks got into the sport because they went to their local boxing gym and started, you know, training with the trainer and learning a little bit about the strategy behind it. And I think for casual fans or novices or people that are newly introduced to the sport, there might be some benefit to hearing the corner about the strategy. And, you know, you might get more out of it than just the pomp and circumstance of who's sitting in the second row, you know?
And bottom line is, it's the life of one boxer unnecessarily, because this is a stopgap measure. It's not that we're saying there will never be fans. We're saying until we get a handle on this, let's do it smart. You know, I feel like I don't want to be bullied into thinking we have to have fans, because that's a financial decision. It's not a humanistic decision. Carolyn, you had mentioned about, I mean, it's a little after the fact, but could you advise anyone, any of the boxers, any of the athletes, what to do now, knowing that financially they're in such jeopardy? Is there anything anyone can do right now?
Yeah, I think, well, you know, we had discussions before, really trying to tell boxers, well, you need to really, think of yourself as a business. So, and that's interesting when you were talking, Rob, about the fact that, some boxers now they're trying to do things. We see a lot on social media, fighters who are, training. So they're doing, training sessions, lessons. More also the podcast where you see like former champions with, new prospects, and they're all, you're talking about boxing together. So I think if we can see more and more boxers involved also, and I guess they always need the plan B. And, and this is why we were talking about eventually having a financial plan committee with the WBC to I know some of them don't make that much money, but it's really important that they really work on their skills and, their potential, so that eventually, well, if boxing doesn't work out, or if something happens like, this situation, at least you can do something else. And more, this is where we want to get them. Of course, those who have more money, it's being wiser with, managing, because, 1 year you can make money, and then you can get, injured, or something can happen. And then, usually, the career is, is not that long. So we need to plan also for the future. So this is why we want to be able to get them to understand that. But and you were talking also eventually if there are, events with no fans, well, the fact that, more boxers would be involved in, as commentator, or, coming up and, talking about what's going on, explaining what's going on also, maybe there are, possibilities for more boxers or people who used to be boxers to be involved, and then kind of, have a new career or something. But it's not easy, but, discipline, what we're talking about, they're really disciplined when it's time to train and, to get ready for a fight. They have to do the same thing with their finance. And this is why we want to, help them as much as possible. And hopefully, this, what's going on won't, put too much pressure pressure on the purses. Hopefully, they won't, fighters will be in a position to still make more money as opposed to making less money because of what's going on and the fact that we cannot have fans and blah, blah, blah. So, but I think that it's education to get them to realize that, we can help them, but they need to do their part as well. But we need to be there to support and come up with ideas. And just by hearing you all, we're hearing ideas for them and, how to help them to grow and be able to have a future,
I think it's really time for ancillary boxing content, the content that you can create that's it's about the boxer, but it's not necessarily seeing him box or seeing him or her box. And the idea that you would want to continue promoting something the same way that you've been promoting for 50 years, now that everything's changed around you, it would just be, I think it's kind of lunacy. I think it's really time to figure out what other kind of things you can give the fan that might not necessarily be the pomp and circumstance of a big show. It's the other things that you can show him that I think are really important now. And I think
it's very strange in the boxing community, even with all the big stars, that very few of them have ever gotten traditional commercial contracts. You don't see them on the, in the recent years, you don't see them as the face of a cereal or the whatever. Other athletes do. So social media and doing ancillary, it seems to be ideal for a boxer who is smart or has good guidance, because God knows boxercising, everyone wants that body. There is so much respect now for the boxer and the boxing workout that there must be a way for them to commercialize that.
I mean, that Garcia kid that Rob, you referenced, he hasn't had too many big fights yet, but he's becoming a recognizable name because of the speed workouts that he posts on social media. And, I think boxing as a whole will benefit really from there being more brand recognition with individual athletes, as they create their own personas on social media and outside.
I have a question. I have worked in the Barclays Center. It's one of the best places to work a fight. And it's a whole experience. When you are in a hotel in Brooklyn and you get the subway and right there and see the Barclays and getting to there. And I mean, you can commentate the fight. It's amazing, of course. But aren't we focusing too much in what we cannot have right now? Aren't we missing a lot that? But as Rob said, we have the 24/7 that everybody's watching before the fight. Now we can have 24/7, 24/40 or whatever. And we can get this kind of material. We can get to know the fighters. We can do a lot of other things.
The personal interest story. Sorry, not to cut you off, Brian. I'm just going to say the personal interest story is one of the best marketing tools, hands down.
Absolutely. My background is soap operas, and to me, everything is soap opera. You get an interesting character, people will follow that character. I don't care if they're a plane, if they're an airport attendant or a boxer. If it's an interesting story, you got their attention. But another thing, Carolyn, you said that kind of occurred to me when you said Canadians might have to fight Canadians, which means Mexicans might have to fight Mexicans. And Tom Hauser did an article a couple of weeks ago about why young kids are not gravitating to boxing as much as they could. And one of the things he pointed out is because they don't identify with local teams, like, the New York Knicks or the New Nets or whatever. Maybe we end up with the Canadian team playing the Mexican team. I mean, there are all kinds of things that may come out of this that might be kind of interesting and positive.
But I think, currently, because it might take a while because before we can have people from foreign countries come to Canada to fight. But why not have one province versus the other? Have kind of a rivalry between, I don't know, Alberta and Quebec, or especially Ontario and Quebec. But there could be something that could be done in the meantime to say, well, and you can already see some fighters saying, hey, I would like to fight him, and I would. So we already know that, we have someone from Alberta who wants to fight a guy from Montreal, same thing, Ontario. So I think we need to come up with ideas. I'm still positive about. Well, it's different also here in Quebec. Well, in Canada, but we have to know that some provinces don't want people from Quebec to go. Like New Brunswick, they're saying we don't want to see you because Montreal, with the virus and everything, so stay home. But yeah, I think that it's different because from one province to another, it's not the same thing. But we can see out west, things are getting better. So of course, we have to be careful and it's safety first. But I think that we need to be thinking, so give some hope also to fighters. But it has to be reasonable and realistic, but not just say, well, let's wait. And so I think that, being proactive is a good thing.
So Victor and Jill, are you hereby authorizing the WBC to sanction 160 national sub belts?
Why not?
Quarantine's lifted, and then those 160 sub belt holders will get the chance to.
And the WBC also, by the way, talking about charity, is looking in on a lot of the fighters that are in trouble right now. And doing all kinds of programs, whether it's food programs where they're giving people money, for food through programs, or there is the 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗 Fund where they apply for money so their homes don't get closed down, so their doctor bills get paid. It's done by an outside organization in Las Vegas. We just give them the names and then there's voting on them, but we are trying to stay in touch and helpful with the community, but there's just so much to do. I mean, I walk down the street in New York and it's very sad. It's very sad, but we're doing our best. So can we end by saying it's not time for Mauricio to put on his Dallas Cowboys shirt yet, but we might be cautiously optimistic about the future. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I think we're absolutely moving into a phase where we're thinking about the future rather than thinking about how we're going to get through a tough time. So rather than thinking about all the horrible things that are going on, I think the narrative has shifted to how do we prepare to get back into business, reopen the economy, reopen venues, and get sports back on the television sets of all the folks that enjoy watching sport.
Yeah. And then when we start making money again, Caroline will tell us how to hold on to it. That's her job.
I won't, not me, I won't be holding on to their money. Yeah.
Do you think that when this reopens, I know many people lost their jobs, but there's many people that still are making money and eager to go out and spend. Do you think it's going to be a fast recovery?
It's hard to say, because now that they're reopening like stores, you can see that, everyone is saying, well, it's not that as it used to be. People are kind of, it's not the same thing. Will people go to, venue and like here, like the Bell Center or Centre Vidéotron? I don't know. But yeah, many people lost their jobs, but the government has been helping a lot also here in Canada. So it remains to be seen. But at the same time, people, they want to go out. They want to do something. They're tired of being home and doing, okay, after a while, I go from the second floor to the first floor and, after a couple of weeks, I would like to do something else. So I think if we feel it's safe and, ticket price is right, I think that people, it might be slow, maybe not as it used to be, but yeah, maybe I'm too optimistic, but yeah, I think it should come back.
In like 2008, I don't remember where I came home from, but everything had crashed. And I remember walking around Manhattan, and it was a New York I'd never seen before. Everything was like 90% off. And nobody was buying. The restaurants were closed. It was just the most horrible scene. And it came back. And now it went away again. But it did come back. And in 2008, 2009, nobody thought people would be going out to restaurants and spending and whatever. My heart goes out to the people, particularly in restaurant businesses and areas like that. There's such a gap between, even if it comes back, how do you recoup all that you've lost in that period of time? But I'm going to be cautiously optimistic.
Mhm.
Why not? Brian, are you cautiously optimistic?
I'm going to fall back on my piece that certainty is often the enemy of truth. So I'm going to admit that I'm not certain, but it's easier. You may as well be optimistic because
Cautiously optimistic.
it beats the downside, right?
Right. You can't function on the downside.
From a mental health perspective, by the way, like don't count what day you're in quarantine. So I've been encouraging people. I'm married to a PhD psychologist. I have a master's in psychology. Don't say day 97 because then it's a terrible thing. Just you're here as long as you're here. At some point you won't. Tomorrow you could very well be here. Also, at some point you won't be here, and just like do it that way. I'm here as long as I'm here, and then I'll be someplace else when I get the chance to be someplace else. So
Brian,
your mental health that way.
There's been here. He shows.
I have to drive an hour and a half from my house to my office. I don't want to go back to my office anymore.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. Let's name just one personal guilty pleasure that we've each gotten by not having to go back to the office. Victor, you started. Carolyn, do you have one personal guilty pleasure?
I work from home and my gym is at home, so it's kind of it didn't change that much.
Keith?
I got my evenings back. I used to be out 6 out of 7 nights a week, and I got 3 little kids here at home, and it's nice to see all their faces and tuck them in for bed.
Brian? I'm afraid. Yeah. Brian?
No, well, I could say something that would make you afraid, but instead, I'll say that this is the first time in history that I've had lunch with my kids on weekdays, like ever. It's so good.
That's nice. And Rob?
Yeah, I've been doing a whole lot more writing, which is pretty cool. But I guess the guilty pleasure, like, is I've been watching a lot of like 80s reruns, like stuff that I used to watch when I was a kid, and I don't know why, but that's the thing that I'll go to in the middle of the night when it's wild.
What show holds up better than you thought?
God, you know, this is really weird. Remember that show In the Heat of the Night?
Yeah,
my parents used to watch it all the time, and I used to come in every now and again. And for some reason, I can't stop watching it, and I don't know why, but I can't stop.
I'm watching the Fantasy Island.
Fantasy Island.
Yeah, I have a question for Keith.
Yes.
Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, do you think that maybe after this?
That's the aspiration.
On the record, his answer is yes.
Right. I have to be there.
Well, we want to thank you all for giving your time, and this has been a lot of fun. And Rob, I can't wait to see what you do next. I really want to see, I mean, this has been such an incredible journey for a filmmaker. It may not have been the one you chose or wanted, but it's still...
I really can't wait for everybody to see it. I mean, we were this close to selling it to a network before this pandemic hit. You know, in fact, they told us back in January. I won't mention the network, but I had pitched them this show that we were almost finished with, and 15 other boxing related shows. You know, different series, and you know the response was, we're only looking for shows right now that will help promote our current events that are coming up, and we're not going to be interested until ancillary content until about June, I think. I said, so get back to us in June. I said, okay, cool. And now everything's shut down. There are no fights. There are no events. And I think that the one cool part of, or the one good thing, at least from my perspective, will be everybody has watched everything. Everything that there is to watch, everyone's watched it, and they're going to be hungry for new content. So hopefully that could be a really cool thing for boxing if somebody wants to pick up some really cool shows. And if anybody wants to contact me, feel free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would think that I saw some of your work. It's definitely great. It's definitely great, but it's definitely going to change now given what's happening. It's a richer, sadder, more wonderful, more exciting palette to lie ahead. So you, Brian, any last words? Brian?
as the only multiple Emmy winner and nominee on this call, I would leave the last words to you, Jill.
Thank you all for coming. Victor, it's been a pleasure. Anybody, Carolyn, Keith, anything to add to this? It's been a great deal of fun. I don't know how many people we helped out there, but I've had a ball.
We passed an hour of their lives in quarantine, right? Helpful. Definition of helpful.
Victor?
With everyone.
I think we have to wrap it up. And I just want to say thanks for your time. It was a lot of fun and I learned, and I'm going to look. Do you know, Rob, where can I watch the business of boxing in Mexico?
Oh, I hope I can tell you very soon.
Thank you. I would love to watch it.
Sent me just the interview link, that little teaser. It's so much fun.
Will do.
The teaser.
Thanks. And thanks for your time. Please stay home, stay safe. Jill.
Stay hip, stay cool, and optimism and virtual hugs. This will pass. We'll be here to see it through. I know it. Love to all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.